Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Play Front Mission 5 Scars of the War. Well, I can't even tell you how many times I've restarted making this video today. I got up early this morning and I have been messing around with the encoding settings and sound settings for hours. But this is my second major attempt at doing it because all the settings finally seem to be in order. And yeah, I will get going with it. Alright, so here we are on the CVN-112 Eclipse. The code of the Eclipse actually designates that it is a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. That is an internal designation used by the US Navy. I was expecting it to be called like the USS Eclipse, but actually they decided to go with this internal designation instead, just to point out how advanced and amazing this ship is, which we'll see a little bit more about later in the video. Right, so let's begin at the gym. So, these soldiers are reacting to the scandal caused by the revelations of what was happening with the B device in the Huffman Conflict, Second Huffman Conflict. And I think their reaction is realistic for maybe some soldiers. It's maybe the kind of sentiment you see in the Flanders Field poem about World War I. You know, it's like maybe the war is kind of senseless and horrible, and maybe the brass is kind of incompetent and corrupt, or in this case, very corrupt. But these soldiers have their camaraderie, they have their patriotism, and this leads them to continue serving and continue fighting, despite the fact that people that are leading them are pretty horrible. So you can assume from this dialogue that even though Cicada Industries went under because of the scandal, there were some members of the USN government who, despite being affected by the scandal, continued to enjoy considerable social status and wealth, and they didn't all get thrown in jail or anything like that. So unfortunately, the guilty were not all punished. So yeah, and then there's a little bit of talk here about the USN elections. We can see, based on this dialogue, that the USN is still a US-style bipartisan oligarchy. I guess you might call it a democracy, if you were so inclined. You know, they've got the general franchise, just like the present-day USA, and two parties that run the show, and really no interesting political choices. Actually, there is a little bit of this that I will talk about maybe at the end of the game when we talk about sort of what happened to Walter and what happens in the aftermath of Front Mission 5. But for now, that's really all we can say based on what this dialogue tells us. Another thing to note, we are now able to scout pilots. So we can go ahead and scout Robert. You can see he's got this little bit of information about him that we maybe noted in a previous video. Each pilot has a little blurb telling you about them. And, you know, he's an atheist who has doubts about life, so he's maybe a little bit, in a sense, existential crisis. So that's kind of interesting, but this whole scout mechanic introduces a pretty radical break with the rest of the Front Mission series. And what that break is actually is that in the previous games you would recruit a large roster of pilots, and each of them would be unique characters with their own backstory, their own dialogue. Maybe that amount of dialogue would vary from character to character quite a bit, but they were all pretty unique. In the case of Front Mission 5, you have a small number of significant, like plot significant characters, and then a very large roster of pilots with only this slight little blurb here and a little bit of base dialogue to tell you who they are and what they're interested in. They're all just kind of stats, or just, you know, players you can add to your roster, basically. As if you're playing like a baseball game or something. And that is a pretty significant difference. I guess in some ways the elimination of the large roster of characters allowed them to focus more on the main group of characters in the game. But on the other hand, I think it does suck a little bit of the life out of the game when you compare it to something like Front Mission 2. Which also had a very large roster, but the characters were a little bit more interesting than these characters that you run into in the base. But everybody's got their own take on that, because really, you know, if we look at this character, you can say, oh, he's got his rough and self-critical demeanor, so he's kind of a jerk. Maybe we don't want to recruit him. But yeah, like, what the changes in the roster imply is that you have a lot more capacity to vary up your unit. You can deploy, say, 3 assaults, or 2 assaults, or 3 gunners, or whatever you want to do, because you have access to these other pilots. And you can also vary them based on their sort of personality type, like whether they're aggressive or passive or what, like how they behave in links. It can all be varied up according to what you want. So, like, you know, I say that Front Mission 5 is the best game in the series in terms of gameplay refinement quite often, and this is just another addition to that whole thing, where, like, you have this huge amount of flexibility in your loadout that you can do for each mission. Okay. And that dialogue is just talking about what I was just mentioning, that, you know, since you can choose to either go for like a mechanic heavy unit or a assault heavy unit, it really depends on your playstyle and what you want to bring to the mission. You have that flexibility available to you. Right, and so when he says that, you know, Feng is the silent type, that's because of the trauma that he suffered from Randy's death, and we're going to see a little bit more about that in this video. The other thing to note is, yeah, they talk about how advanced the Eclipse is, and we will see a little bit more of that as well. And this tells us that Walter is, really affected by Randy's death, and even though it's been 3 years, he's still really carrying that weight on his shoulders. And, like, he's the most beat up after every mission he goes out on, because that suggests, like, he's protecting his fellow squad mates, his subordinates, and he's really fixated on the idea of not letting more of his subordinates die in battle. The other thing, we're going to see a lot of ranks mentioned in these base sections, like First Lieutenant. And the reason for that is because in Japanese, when you talk about somebody, you usually add an honorific to their name, like San or Chan or Kun or whatever. And in the military, they go ahead and add their rank. So, like, it would be like, Feng Tai if he was Captain Feng, right? So when I translated this game, I decided to include the ranks, and the reason why I did that was because I think it helps to mark out Walter's progression through the ranks in the game and his development as a character. Like, you can see him, like, going up the ranks as you go from mission to mission, and that tells you something about how time is passing and about how he is maturing. So that is Ed's typical humor, and he's just telling us about, how to use the scout system. So yeah, all our squad mates from the graduating class, same, I think it was what, the 21st class or something like that. They are trying to cheer us up because it's been 3 years now, and Walter is still, he's still got a case of the blues. Okay, right. This is really important. So we're going to learn quite a bit about Lynn in this video. So when she was younger, she was really bookish. We know that from Ed, right? But we learn now that she's a master of karate, combat sambo, and jujitsu. So something big changed with her. We know that much. We know her personality changed, and now we know that she also is a master of these CQB techniques. So there's some speculation here that maybe she was in, like, an infiltration unit, maybe something like the Rangers or some kind of assassination squad that would get special training. But there's all these rumors about her, like maybe she was in intelligence, maybe she was in special forces, maybe she was in the infiltration group or assassination group, but nobody quite knows exactly what her background is. So it's rumored that she learned to beat her instructors in CQB in just 4 days. So she has this incredible learning ability, and that is definitely not normal. And we have to wonder why it is that she got this ability. And we're going to learn maybe a little bit more about that as this video goes on. So then Ed tells us that. So first of all, Walter used to always look after Lynn when she was younger, and again we see that she was really kind of bookish and shy when she was younger, but also that Walter is the only person in the unit who is not afraid of Lynn, and there's some suggestion here from Edward that Walter should go after her. They should get it on or something. And that tells us that there hasn't been a romance between them since, Walter joined the unit, but they're still on pretty good terms compared to Lynn's relationship with everybody else. All right, so Lynn. So first Edward joined the military, then Walter and Randy joined, and then Lynn decided to follow after Walter and Randy. But Lynn was, as she said, very bookish, and she couldn't handle the training for the military. So she said that the only way she could join the military and, do well is to throw away her past. That is quite strange. I mean, we understand that she's changed as a person, changed in her personality. She got a lot tougher, and that's kind of what you would expect from somebody joining the military. But to say that she threw away her past, well, that is quite unexpected. And you'll see in her room here, her office, that she has on the left a picture of Freedom City. It's some kind of rendering of the scene that we saw in the introduction video to the game. And on the right, there are a number of photos of, people that she knows. Looks like there's a photo of a hangar, and then maybe a photo of Walter and possibly of Glenn. I'm not sure what all of them look like. They're pretty hard to see. But the point is that she has all of these photos from her past in her office, even though she said that she threw her past away. So what is going on? We're going to have to find out as the game progresses. And this Captain Drake is in charge of the unit's logistics. And you can kind of go talk to her. She sometimes has funny things to say, like that. And then this Major Grant, you can keep annoying him as the as the game goes on, and there's some funny dialogue based on that. The captain's quarters are empty because, of course, the captain is on the bridge. So let's go take a look at the briefing.
キリバスに無人と称される島がある。ここに大陸弾道ミサイルの発射施設計画が極秘裏に進行中との情報が得られた。条約違反かつ前線の脅威となるこれら施設を破壊するのが今作戦の目的である。これを見てもらいたい。島の周囲には対空砲が設置され、2カ所ある揚陸ポイントには迎撃施設もあり、侵入は容易ではない。作戦は空挺降下と強襲揚陸の2班に分かれて行う。まず空挺降下班が先行し迎撃施設を破壊、その後強襲揚陸班が上陸し敵兵力を殲滅、退路を確保する。フェン、コリンズ。イエスサー。いつも通りだ。役割を決めておけ。イエスサー。海岸制圧後、前期は速やかに島中心部へ進行し、本作戦目標である各ポイントを破壊。敵の援軍が到着する前に撤収する。撤収は空挺部隊により行われる。対空砲は全てクリアにすること。以上だ。何か質問は？よろしい。作戦開始は3週間後。これより本艦はコンディションイエローを発令する。レベル4で待機。準備を始めろ。今すぐだ。
Alright, so the next mission you can choose to either do a airborne insertion or to do a waterborne landing. I'm going to go for the waterborne landing. I usually go for the airborne approach, but I'm going to go for the waterborne approach this time. So he's kind of crapping out some RPs for us here, I guess. I don't know, this game is a weird sense of humor sometimes. And Ed just trying to cheer us up as well, telling us to get our act together. You know, a lot of people are going to say, well, like, Walter is just another boring, you know, brooding JRPG protagonist. But I think that he's a little bit more dynamic than say, Squall from FF8, because he starts out the game, he's not really that moody or brooding, and after Randy's death, he takes it pretty hard, which is completely understandable. And we'll see that, you know, as time goes on, he tries to get over it and tries to deal with his past, and that's going to be a lot of what his motivation is throughout this game. Now, I'm not going to say that I think Walter is the most interesting protagonist out there. He is a little bit too vanilla for my liking. I have to say, he's just kind of too good at everything, and everybody's like so impressed with him, so it makes him a little bit less interesting. I think he's kind of like, you know, Harry Potter that way, who I don't dislike as a character that much, but I also wasn't super interested in. One thing to say though is that even though Walter is maybe not the most interesting protagonist, I think that Lynn is really interesting as a character. She is one of my top 2 favorite characters in this game, and we will meet the other one not too much time. So, there's just a few things left to take a look at, and then we'll be done with this video. So go to the armored section and check out the simulator room. And yeah, just as I was saying, Walter's kind of good at everything, and that includes being popular with the ladies. So, again, it's just... I don't dislike Walter, but I'm not a huge fan of him as a character either. I think that Ash in Front Mission 2 is probably my favorite protagonist. Although, actually, I really like Lisa as well. Can you tell I really like the story from Front Mission 2? Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely the best in the series. Aside from that, I thought Kevin was kind of cool from Front Mission 1. But anyway, there's nothing too important to see in here, so I guess we will go ahead and wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, I will be going on to do the waterborne landing mission, and there's 2 missions upcoming. The first, the waterborne landing, and then after that there is the mission where we have to actually take out the silos, as Lynn mentioned. I really don't like that mission. I find it to be quite a pain, and well, I shouldn't say I hate it, it's just, it is quite challenging, so I expect that might take a couple attempts to do. The first one I'm not too worried about, but we'll see how it goes. So anyhow, in preparation for that, I'm going to do some arena stuff to get some money, do our hangar stuff because there are new parts available, and I'm going to leave the survival simulator for after the next set of missions, just so we can get a little bit of plot progression in, and then we'll go ahead and start with the survival simulator, because it's pretty... Well, it's definitely a challenge, and it's kind of its whole... Sorry, I can't even speak. It's its own thing, separated from the rest of the plot, but still quite important to the game. So like when we get into it, I really want to be able to just focus on that and get into it, and maybe do a couple videos of the survival simulator. But there's a lot to think about, a lot to do now that we have our access to a new roster of pilots and new parts, and just a whole bunch of new options available to us now that the game is really underway. So there's a lot to look forward to in the rest of our playthrough of Front Mission 5. And I hope you do, so I will see you in the next video.